Hi friends and welcome! In today's video we're going to be going over 20 autumn themed doodle ideas, and then we're going to take some of those elements that we've previously practiced and put them into a full illustration. Now all you're going to need for this doodle to drawing project is a pencil, some fine liners if you have them, and at the very end of the video I'll be using some charcoal, but feel free to use any medium that you're most comfortable working with. So grab your drawing supplies and let's get started. Our first doodle today is going to be a mushroom, and this one I believe is called Amanita muscaria, but I just think of them as the Mario mushrooms myself. But they have a lot of personality and I love drawing them. So for this mushroom, I'm going to be drawing it like I'm looking up at it so we can kind of see the underneath part and all those little intricate gills of the mushroom. And this mushroom is the one that's red with those little white spots and bumps at the top. So you can draw the bumps flat, or you can even draw them kind of protruding up on top of the mushroom, and that gives it even more personality. And for the detail work of this mushroom, I'm going to be doing some light hatching on the underside of the mushroom, so where those gills are and on the stem. And I think that a lot of these illustrations could also really benefit from some stippling, and that's just when you do a whole bunch of little dots. I use that a lot for some light shadow, but I feel like it can kind of give some texture to these mushrooms, and then also just some interesting shadowing techniques that you can put onto these doodles. Now moving on from this mushroom, we're going to be adding some leaves and stems today, and I really like to add this very simple berry stem to a lot of the work that I do. I find it's really nice to add this one in particularly to wreath drawings that I'm doing, or just little blank spaces in journals. It can just be really handy, and it's very simple and very sweet. I'm also doing this tiny little mushroom, which is good to add into just little spaces that you just need something. And then moving on to these spiky leaves. I love these ones. They have kind of a curved shape down at the bottom, and then you just bring your pen or your pencil up into these little spikes reaching the top. And then you can add one big vein down the middle of each one, and then some tiny veining out on the leaves. I find this doodle so simple to do, but it really works well with so many different projects that I work on. And when we move on to our drawing portion of the video, I'm definitely going to be including this guy as well, because he's just got lots of personality and I love him. And another very sweet and simple doodle to know and to include on any of your projects are acorns. They're so simple to draw, but there's something about them that's so magical. I don't know, even my son goes and collects acorns all the time and just considers them like these magical fairyland things. I don't know why, but they're just kind of special. And the only details that I'm adding into this doodle are these tiny U shapes that I add onto the hat of the acorn, and it just kind of shows the texture of that part of the acorn. And then I'm just doing a tiny bit of shading on the left hand side just to give it a little bit of three-dimensionality. And next up is an oak leaf. I love oak leaves just because they're so irregular shaped. So when drawing the shape, you can kind of just go a little bit wild. And the veining is also really simple to do. All you need to do is for each kind of protruding section of the leaf, just do some veining out that way. And I kind of think of them almost as rivers. So you can kind of give a little bit of a bend in each one of those veins on the leaf and just flow them out into a natural direction. And because it's fall and these guys get left out so often in doodles, I'm including a gourd. Now this was on specific request by one of my girlfriends who teaches elementary school, and she couldn't find any type of examples for gourds, but they're so simple and they're really cool shapes. So this is just one shape that you can do with kind of a long skinny neck, but there are so many irregular amazing shapes that gourds can take. And speaking of different shapes, I wanted to add another mushroom, those Amanita muscaria mushrooms, but in kind of like a button top. Depending on what you're feeling, you might want to have a rounded top or one of the longer ones, but I thought I'd give you an example here that you can copy on your own. And like the other one, the details are pretty simple. I'm just going to add a couple of hatching lines underneath the button top and just a couple extra lines on the side of the stem as well. Okay, so full transparency for this one, I have no idea what type of leaf this is. Maybe if you do, you can put it in the comments below, but I really like it and I've used it many times over. I just have no idea what it's called or what tree it's from. But this leaf is a very star-like leaf. It has 5 different leaves on it. And I've used it so much in the past because I just think it's so beautiful. It reminds me kind of a maple leaf, and I'm also Canadian, so of course I'm going to like that. And for the details on this one, again, we're not making huge elaborate drawings and paintings that take 700 hours to finish. These are just doodles to help you relax and get some creative practice in. So we're going to keep our veining really simple again for this. Next up is another mushroom. Again, I have no idea what this one is actually called. So if you can enlighten me in the comments, please do. But I am no botanist of fungi, but I love the little skirts that some of these mushrooms have. And I actually looked it up and they're called an annulus, and it's kind of like a belly button. It's kind of made when they were first being created. I don't know, I thought it was a nice little fun fact. So it's called an annulus or a skirt because I kind of see some of these mushrooms wearing skirts in a way. Sometimes I feel like I should go on Jeopardy with some of these random facts that I know, but I also know that I am terrible at Jeopardy, so maybe not. But it's still a good time, so the more you know. Now next up is another irregular shaped leaf, and I think it's important to note that all your doodles don't need to be completely accurate. They can be made up leaves, they can be inspired by a part of this leaf and a part of that leaf. These are your doodles, they are your drawings. And I'm just going to also create this tiny little mushroom here. I've used this little guy before in little blank spaces of my journals or in between a lot of my drawings. Just something really small that kind of fits in the space and fills it up just right. And next up is a very nice narrow leaf. I find this one works really well for edges of pages or to frame out something that you're drawing. It's very simple to draw with just one line up the middle and then a curved bottom with a whole bunch of little spikes tapering off at the very end for a nice point. And I'm going to keep it very simple here again because these are just our quick little doodles, and our veining is just going to be very simple, quick little marks up to the very edges of the leaf. And what would fall doodles be without, of course, a pumpkin? So for this one, I'm going to be doing a very standard round pumpkin. And the details of this drawing are just going to be a lot of contour lines that would help show the roundness and kind of those bumps along the rind of the pumpkin. I don't know if that's the right word, but the rind of the pumpkin. And we're going to add a couple of little lines on the stem to kind of give it some gnarliness. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, the older I get, the uglier I want my pumpkin to be. But they're not ugly, they just, I don't know, they've got more personality to them and they're more interesting. I don't know, maybe that's actually a life lesson or something in there too, but I like my pumpkins ugly. They're more interesting. They've seen some things, you know? But on to the next doodle. So these leaves I do all the time. It is just a really nice simple stem of leaves that kind of goes with everything. They're just nice teardrop shaped leaves, and I always put one line up the middle and kind of leave it at that. Simplicity works really well for this stem of leaves. Now next up is just another wonderfully simple fall leaf that you can add into your doodles. Really quickly done there. And that's just in preparation for our big maple leaf or Canadian maple leaf. I feel like we had to draw these so many times in school, and they really have a particular shape, so you kind of have to learn them as a Canadian, or else your maple leaf always looked ridiculous when it was hung up with all the other maple leaves. But really try to follow that particular shape that I'm showing you here. And as for the veining, you're just going to have one vein that's going to go to each section of those parts of the leaves. And for each one of those, you can add a couple more veins on each one, but less is more for this leaf. I kind of went a little bit overboard, so again, less is more. A teeny tiny mushroom for your viewing pleasure. I mean, it's adorable. I think we need more teeny tiny things in our lives. We'd be a happier human race. Okay, now we've reached our last doodle of this fall page, and this is with a mushroom that I do know actually some things about. This is the morel mushroom. I think that's how it's pronounced at least. We grow these in our backyard. They grow in swampy, kind of muddy areas, but they have lots of really cool irregular shaped holes, and they're really neat looking mushroom. And they're actually edible, but I haven't been brave enough yet to actually fry them up. I know they're expensive to buy, but I'm always worried to actually eat mushrooms. But anyways, so you're going to want to focus on creating very kind of weird shaped bean type shapes for these holes. They are bumpy, they're irregular, and some are small, some are big. You can't really go wrong. Just go for a whole bunch of holes in the white spaces. I'm going to leave these white, but you can actually fill them in with your pencil or your fine liner, whatever you're using. And I'm just going to add a couple of hatching lines in that kind of gill part of the mushroom and down the stem, and there you are. So well done, you finished all of these amazing doodles. And I'm really curious about which ones you really liked and which ones you didn't. It's often just me behind a computer screen, so I never get to hear about everyone's practices. So please leave a comment down below on which ones you really liked and which ones you didn't. So now that we've finished our doodles, we're going to get some of those elements and we're going to put them together to create a drawing. So what I've created here is a focal point being the mushroom and one of the ones that we have previously doodled, but choose whatever mushroom speaks to you. And I've put a little snail on top because, again, I feel like snails and mushrooms are just kind of magical and wondrous. So I've put this little guy on top and I've made a frame down at the bottom in a U shape. And all of the elements in this frame are the little doodles that we've previously done. So you'll see some of those berry stems and oak leaves and the acorns and just a couple of extra little pieces put together to frame this mushroom and snail. Now feel free to copy this exact one, but also feel free to get creative and do what suits your personality and what is in your particular style. But just a little side note for etiquette, if you do choose to copy this, which you of course are so welcome to do, but please make sure to always credit the original artist. So if you do post it online, please tag me and I would love to see some of your renditions in your style. But back to the drawing. Now I am using my fine liners to go over this with ink, and a lot of people ask what I use. I've tried a whole bunch of different brands, but these Pigma Micron pens are the absolute best. I'm not sponsored, they just are the best product, I think. So I'm going to be going over this mostly in an 05 nib, but then sometimes I use an 01, and for really tiny details, I use a 003 nib, so super tiny. And just as a side note, once I've outlined everything, I'm actually going to go over this with charcoal, which is kind of my new favorite medium to play around with. But you can leave this as is. It's just like an outlined ink drawing, which is beautiful. Or you can go and add color by doing whatever medium you're comfortable with. So that could be adding some watercolor wash, that can be some alcohol markers or colored pencils, whatever it is. If you want to add color, go for it. For me, I just kind of struggle with color. It's really not a strength that I have in my artistic arsenal. So black and white is really good for me. It allows me to focus just on the values rather than getting boggled down by color choices. But I actually did do this drawing twice. I did once in charcoal and then once with my alcohol markers and colored pencils as well. So just for fun, I'll show you the colored version and you can decide which one you like better. So as I'm finishing up doing the last little details of this drawing, you can leave this as is, or you can go and add some more color. Now here is the final drawing. Now I have left out a couple of details on purpose, so I haven't included any of the gills for the mushroom or any kind of lines down the stem to give it some texture or anything like that, because I am going to go over it with charcoal. Now this video is not a video on how to do charcoal, so I'm just going to speed it up so you can see the process here. But even if you don't work in charcoal, you can still get a lot of information that you need for your own drawings or paintings just by looking at the values that you see here. So noticing where the shadows are and where the highlights are is really important to make your drawing realistic or stylized. And sometimes when I watch art tutorials, I just want to sit back and relax and look at someone's process. I find it really relaxing. So if that is you, hello, I see you. I am one of you. So sit back and relax and enjoy this process and this quick little montage of me adding some value to this picture. And voila, here is our finished product. So we did some doodles and then we've combined a lot of those elements to create a cohesive drawing. Now I also said earlier that color is something I really have a hard time with, but I did do a color version and I told you I would share my color version. So here it is. I just completed this with alcohol markers and some pencil crayons. So here's a colorized version. It's not my favorite, but if I don't keep practicing with different colored mediums, I'm never going to improve. So here's for experimenting. Now I hope you found this video helpful today. If you have, please make sure to hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!